Welcome, everyone, to our annual Social Justice Book Lecture. I am Dr. McKinney King, Interim Vice Chancellor and Director for UMKC's Division of Diversity and Inclusion. Tonight's program is one of several lecture series events brought to you by UMKC's Division of Diversity and Inclusion. Our mission is to foster inclusive educational opportunities and an equitable community environment for all students, faculty, staff, and stakeholders. That includes all of you as integral parts of the community we serve. UMKC's commitment to diversity is central to our educational mission, as represented in our fourth pillar of the strategic plan, to foster an environment of invigorating multiculturalism, globalism, diversity, and inclusion. I'd like to extend a special welcome to Dr. Vandana Shiva, our keynote speaker for the evening. It is a pleasure to have you here at UMKC. Thank you for joining us. Our goal for the Social Justice Book Lecture is to bring thought leaders from across the country and around the world in various fields to explore issues of social justice with our community. This lecture aims to foster community through shared literature and relevant dialogue, to think critically about the historical context of social justice issues while focusing on current social justice challenges and the skills necessary for solving such challenges. As we continue throughout tonight's lecture, I hope that we will all be motivated to make social justice a priority. Next, I would like to invite Tim Nguyen to introduce our speaker for the evening. Tim is a UMKC senior majoring in biology. He is president of UMKC's Student Government Association, a trustee scholar, and a Bluford Healthcare Leadership Institute scholar. Tim?
Good evening, and thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Tim Nguyen, and I am a UMKC trustee scholar, Bluford Healthcare Leadership Institute, and this year's Student Government Association president. This lecture would not be all that it is without the support of our community, so we have a few folks to acknowledge and thank. First, we are very grateful to our campus and the community partners and want to especially recognize the UMKC libraries for hosting a book discussion on Dr. Shiva's book, Earth, Democracy, course instructors for including the book in their courses curriculum, and the Social Justice Book Lecture Selection Committee, all in support of the Social Justice Book Lecture. The information and perspectives exchanged during the discussions in class, meetings, and at the library were very valuable, and we thank you. Tonight, we are providing a platform for further reflection, dialogue, and action within our campus community and beyond. But before we welcome tonight's speaker, let's go over a few housekeeping matters. Following the discussion today, we will host a brief Q&A session with questions from the audience. Please submit your questions via the question and answer feature, and we will get to as many as we can as possible. We would also like to ask for your feedback on tonight's lecture. At the conclusion of the lecture, an email evaluation will be sent to your inbox of the email address with which you registered for tonight's event. Your feedback is very valuable to us. We appreciate your time, and please take a moment to complete this online survey tonight or tomorrow, including suggestions for next year. Now that the housekeeping items have been covered, we welcome a national thought leader who will challenge the way we might think about food. Vandana Shiva is one of the world's most respected environmentalist activists and feminists. A trained physicist, she received her PhD at the University of Western Ontario, and since the 1970s have been a vocal figure in the conservation movement. A leader in the International Forum on Globalization, along with Ralph Nader and Jeremy Rifkin, Dr. Shiva fights actively for changing practices in agriculture and the way humans view food. Dr. Shiva emphasizes the need for sustainable agriculture and is a supporter of getting women across the globe more involved in planting and farming. In fact, in 1933, Shiva received the Right Livelihood Award, often known as the Alternative Nobel Peace Prize, for her work placing women and ecology at the heart of modern development discourse. Dr. Shiva is also the recipient of the United Nations Environmental Programme Global 500 Award and the Earth's Day International Award of the United Nations. She is the author of many books, including Earth, Democracy, Justice, Sustainability, and Peace, manifestos on the future of food and seed, Staying Alive, Women, Ecology, and Development, Who Really Feeds the World, and the upcoming Oneness versus the 1%. Dr. Vandana Shiva is here with us tonight to share her wisdom, to challenge us and help us go deeper. Dr. Shiva, welcome.
I send you loving greetings, very, very early morning from India, all the way to Kansas City, to share the evolution of my understanding of humanity, my understanding of the living earth, and my understanding of the principle of diversity. Diversity is not difference that is about hierarchies. The fact that this evening's lecture has a brown, a black, yellow, as they call it, superficial color of our skin doesn't take away our humanity that is common. We are one common humanity on one common home, our beautiful Mother Earth. And both for humanity and for the biosphere, diversity is the organizing principle. It is the organizing principle of life in the natural world and life in the social world. And wherever cracks appear and linkages between biodiversity start breaking down, we have injustice, we have inequality, we have non-sustainability, we have catastrophes, and in fact, in our times, really a threat of extinction. The threat of extinction is already real for the 200 species that are disappearing every day. But for our species, it could become real in as short a period as 100 years. If you look at all the scientific committees set up for the UN treaties, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Intergovernmental Climate Change, Framework on Climate Change, they say we've got a 10-year window to make a shift. Otherwise, in 100 years, life will be unlivable for our species. Our species is very, very young among all the relatives that have evolved on this beautiful planet. The Earth's been evolving around 4 billion years, around 3.3 billion years. She was able to evolve living organisms that had the power of photosynthesis, that could take the sunshine, the carbon dioxide on which our Earth was very, very high concentrations, 98%. And then through living systems, through photosynthesis, through microbes, through the green leaf, through the plants, the Earth brought the temperature down from a 290-degree without a living Earth to a 13-degree average. Now we are worried about a 1 degree change, 0.5% degree change, and as a threat to extinction, more wildfires, more flooding, more torpedoes, more typhoons, more cyclones, more droughts, more extreme events that are already taking lives. So the living Earth created conditions for us to evolve just short 200,000 years. And in a short 200 years, we dug up fossilized carbon, turned it into coal, made it oil, made the Industrial Revolution, made the ships move faster with slaves, made the occupation of indigenous lands even larger, and the crisis, the multiple crises we have today of climate havoc. I don't call it climate change because change makes it look like it's predictable linear line. No, we don't know where the storm will come. We don't know when hailstorms will come. We don't know when snow will come in the summer, and we don't know when floods will come in the desert. It's climate chaos because we have scrambled the organizing principle of life. The Earth as a living system has created conditions of life to maintain life and to renew it on a daily basis. And because of the way we've watched how our lovely, beautiful, healthy body can be made unhealthy with metabolic disorders when we eat junk diets of junk food, the earth as a living organism starts to get a metabolic disorder with a junk diet of fossil oil. Well, I could talk so much about the different forms of energy in the world. I could talk so much about the different processes in physics and the living processes of negative entropy. But because I'm with you to celebrate diversity, I will focus on diversity. As I said, diversity is the organizing principle of life. Living systems do not create sameness. Every part of our body is different. Every cell of our body is unique. In the forest, there are different beings. There are the microbes in the soil and the fungi, and there are the giant mammals in my country, the elephants and the tigers. There are the giant trees and the little herbs. The fact that they are different in size does not make them unequal. COVID has shown how the tiny microbe can bring the whole world to a halt. It is because of COVID I sit here and use it in Kansas City. Otherwise, I would be able to travel and join you physically and see all your wonderful faces in all their diversity. What I have learned over these really half a century of my engagement with protection of biodiversity and reflections on diversity is that cultural and biological diversity go hand in hand, because nature and culture are not separate. Nature does not work on the principle of sameness, of uniformity, of monocultures. The natural world is a constant striving for diversity of expression. Cultures too strive for diversity. Cultural diversity flows from nature's ways and adaptation, which is why indigenous cultures have been so rich in their expressions. Even today, when I travel to remote areas, the clothing, the food, the languages, the housing, that is what makes us rich. Cultural diversity evolves when societies and communities are free to take care of their ecosystems and resources, share them with the commons, and use them sustainably for the common good with common responsibility. Garrett Hardin was totally wrong in talking about the tragedy of the commons. If I had to put Earth democracy in Garrett Hardin's context of an essay, the generation of young students might not even have read it, but this is what the environmental debate was about when I was your age. In effect, basically, I would call the reality the tragedy of privatization and enclosures of the commons, the tragedy of pitting diversity against each other when diversity is responsible for life. Reclaiming the commons is vital to protection of cultural biodiversity. The commons create identity of place, a shared life, a common responsibility. Just as in a forest, diversity of life thrives when human societies view themselves as interconnected, and unity in diversity thrives. Cultural diversity is enriched, sustained, and celebrated. Now, of course, we've got all kinds of colonial definitions, and the idea of wild has been defined colonially as the absence of humans. But the reality shows how wrong that thinking is. It's the absence of destructive humans that makes regions biodiversity rich on 22% of the land. 80% of the world's surviving biodiversity is, and that 22% of the land is where indigenous people are still on the land, have not been displaced, captured as slaves, taken to other continents, displaced as refugees from Syria. Half of Syria is outside, half of Syria. And Afghanistan, we don't know. And all of these are wars of greed. They're wars of not knowing the limits. They're wars of not being able to care, both of the earth and for the community. We are united through our common humanity and our common membership in one earth family. Indigenous people in North America always talk of other beings, not as other species. They talk of other beings as relatives. In my country, we talk of the earth as Vasundhara, and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is the name of the family of the universe. And in fact, when I was writing Earth Democracy, I refer to this concept. Yeah? It incorporates what in India we refer to as Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the earth family, the community of all beings supported by the earth. And the Native Americans use the language of relatives. Of course, we've had the reduction of the family to a patriarchal family, but that doesn't mean we don't reclaim our larger family. It only means we get rid of hierarchies, we get rid of patriarchy that created an artificial division, an hierarchy between men and women, and made powerful men dominant, or the silly hierarchy of the color of our skin. I mean, it's to me mind-blowing that races have traded, you know, the blacks and the browns and the Indians and the Arabs and the Africans have been interacting for millennia. But we didn't find a problem with the color of our skin. It's colonialism that sowed the seeds of racism. Humans, as part of the earth family, have the potential to regenerate the resources of the earth, create wealth cooperatively, and share it equitably. That's the challenge of our species at this moment when we face collapse and extinction. The earth and her resources are living. Human beings and communities take care of nature. That is our primary identity. That is our primary work. Regenerating the resources and creating and sharing them in abundance over the last 3.5 decades. When I was forced to look at why were we using poisons in agriculture with the disaster in the city of Bhopal, or why were farmers agitating? 1984, the farmers' protest started. I did a book then on the Green Revolution, because that's the name that was given to the chemical agriculture and industrial agriculture when it was introduced first in India in the state of Punjab, and now it's being pushed on Africa. And there's a huge movement across Africa of faith leaders, farmers, of scientists saying, Mr. Gates, we don't need the Green Revolution. We don't need chemicals. We don't need your GMO seeds. The earth and her humans, members, have this capacity to regenerate, but greed also has the potential to degenerate. The colonial mechanistic mindset and worldview ignored the interconnectedness and cooperation among species, cultures for mutual support. Commons were enclosed, identities were fragmented and pitted against each other, and cultural conflicts were created as part of divide and rule. My own country, most people don't realize that because we were trading in spices for thousands of years, including when Christ was born, early, St. Thomas came very, very soon after. And we have Orthodox Christians in Kerala who are older than the Christians of Europe. The traders, the Muslim traders came, and we have Muslims in Kerala who have been Islamic longer than the Islamic countries. Not only have we been divided, our histories, our beautifully interwoven histories have been rewritten into linear histories of what I call ecological apartheid. False assumptions of separation and superiority are at the roots of the paradigm of greed and extractivism. I have called the illusion of separation ecological apartheid, based on the word apartheid, which is the Boer Afrikaans word for separation, apartness, not being able to be together. Totally artificial. created only to colonize first South Africa. But the illusion of apartheid really is the global colonial mode. It only became an organized system of legal governance in South Africa, but we also had the potential to defeat apartheid. Gandhi did his first civil disobedience in South Africa from 1906 to 1911. Mandela continued that amazing tradition. Martin Luther King brought it into the heart of the civil rights movement in North America. Across the world, people have resisted apartheid. The false assumption of separation and superiority based on diversity has 4 components. First, the transformation of a living, vibrant, generous Mother Earth, who is creative, who is integral, who is self-organized, who is self-regulated, into Terra Nullius, the empty earth. It's a legal concept. It's created a legal jurisprudence. All of Australia was called empty land, Terra Nullius, because the Aborigines, who are the oldest farmers of the world, 60,000 years they have farmed, were just declared as not being human. It was so easy to call someone of a darker color of the skin, a richer color of the skin, not only a lesser human, but a non-human, therefore defined into the fauna and flora of Australia. So not only did Terra Nullius take away the humanity of the indigenous people, the First Nations, the original people, it basically shut its eye to the amazing biodiversity of the land. And because I worked so long on these issues of enclosures of the commons, solidarity with indigenous people, the Mabo case in South Africa, in Australia, when I was reading the text, I couldn't believe it. The justification for taking over Australia was, it didn't have apple trees. But Australia has everything else. And the justification for enclosing the commons and Locke's thesis on governance and property says, well, the indigenous people in North America allow the bison to roam free. They don't enclose the bison. Therefore, they don't improve agriculture. So freedom was defined as primitiveness, and imprisonment, enslavement was defined as progress. These are the deep assumptions we have to move out from to sow the seeds of Earth democracy. But hand in hand with redefining a living Earth into Terra Nullius goes the fact that if the Earth is empty and she's dead, well, we don't have to really take care of anything. It erases all ecological and ethical limits and makes the power to exploit and dominate absolute, creating economic authoritarianism and totalitarianism. The denial of the integrity of creation is at the root of ecological destruction. The attempts at mastery and control through tools of extraction and violence against the earth and her being have been defined as tools of improvement. But hand in hand with goes another assumption, where diversity is turned into hierarchy, the assumption of anthropocentrism, that humans are superior to their other relatives, who can be reduced to objects, to be manipulated, owned, exterminated, pushed to extinction. It leads to what I have called bio-nullius, that life is empty. So much of my life's work has gone on the issues of patenting living organisms, patenting seed, when you cannot invent a seed. You cannot invent life. You can modify it, you can add a new gene, but adding a new chair to your university does not mean the creation of your university. It just means you've added a bit of furniture. It doesn't allow the furniture added to become the owner of the campus, the collector of fees from the students, but royalties on patents is precisely collection of rents. And to allow it by moving one gene across species to take over species and 20-year generations in the future is so wrong scientifically, so wrong ethically, so wrong ecologically. The anthropocentrism is based on the denial that we are members of one Earth family. And it is so linked to ecological apartheid of separation and the human apartheid of separation within the human family. If nature is dead and not living, nature and the earth have no rights. There are no ecological limits. You can exploit as much as you please. The result, of course, is there for us to live through, not just see. And these disasters are not just disasters in IPCC reports and reports of the UN system. We are living through them. I mean, look at what you are living through in North America. The amazing movement of Black Lives Matter is responding non-violently to the violence against people of color. In a similar way, we have other forms of violence against the earth. My understanding, even of recent emerging infectious diseases and pandemics, is they're basically primarily from forests. Ebola comes from African forests. HIV, Zika, SARS, all of these new infections and viruses didn't exist in human society. But as the global greed system has invaded deeper and deeper and deeper into forests, it has taken away the safe home of indigenous people as well as animals whose home that forest is. And then you have what some scientists call the spillover effect. The viruses, the ticks, all kinds of living organisms then become fatal infections for the human community. We need to understand COVID in that humility and treat it as a lesson for restraint, a lesson to say we must stop invasions. Colonialism has been around too long. 500 years is more than enough. It took the lives of Africans. It exterminated 90% of the indigenous people of North America. It killed more than 40 to 60 million of my people by taking this rich land, declaring it the property of England and extracting rents from the land, from the very peasants who were growing the land, who was the original trustees of the land, because we don't have a concept of private property land in our tradition. We don't know how many Aboriginal people killed. This is a structure of genocide, and the genocide doesn't stop. One of the things we need to understand is the cry of the earth for justice is the same cry that is coming from people. And during this period of the pandemic, the cry is within them. But because of the lockdown, because of the huge economic crisis, it has not been possible for that cry to be heard by those in power. Tim said forthcoming, Oneness versus 1%. My book, Oneness versus 1%, is out, has been out from Chelsea Green in North America, and is partly about the times we are living in. We are witnessing multiple pandemics simultaneously. The first is the corona pandemic. The second is the hunger pandemic. The third pandemic is the destruction of livelihoods. The World Food Programme has warned that the world community is facing a looming hunger pandemic. More than 300,000 people could starve to death if we do not create systems to ensure the right food. Something that has always outraged me is, why are farmers half the hungry people of the world, what is distorted in the system, and why in the richest land, with the biggest agribusiness, are there food deserts? It doesn't make sense, except when you understand it through extractivism, concentration of power, monopoly. According to Oxfam, there's a hunger virus. 11 people are dying per minute now for lack of food. There's also the pandemic of the loss of livelihoods. And in your country, you had so many protests, just not being evicted from your home because you lost your job and now you're losing your home. The International Labour Organization Director General has said for millions of workers, no incomes mean no food, no security to protect the most vulnerable. We're all witnessing an inequality pandemic, further polarizing the 1% and the 99%, and further creating cracks that were already there in society. While working people lose their livelihoods, the non-working billionaires have become richer. While the rich become richer, working people slip into poverty. 8 million Americans added to the ranks of the poor in the richest country as businesses closed, jobs disappears, and the Jeff Bezos and the Elon Musks and the Gates, they added to them millions. The figures are mind-boggling. As we stand on the precipice, as we look into the future, how do we create Earth democracy? And what is Earth democracy? You have, of course, read my book, Earth Democracy, but let me summarize in terms of the principles of what I see as the principles of Earth democracy. It's a worldview and paradigm, a practice that is based on the recognition of the integrity and diversity of creation. It recognizes that humans are part of the earth, living. The first recognition is the earth is living, because for 500 years, we treated as property and therefore took out her life. And for 200 years, with the fossilized paradigm of fossil fuels, we've just basically declared all living processes as non-existence. For those of you who are also environmentally concerned, let me just share with you the denial of the living earth, what it has meant. It has meant that instead of recognizing that the earth could bring a temperature down from 290 degrees to average of 13, and she could bring a carbon dioxide content down from 98% down to 0.02% through her living mechanisms of photosynthesis. The green leaf taking the sun, taking the carbon dioxide, turning it into carbohydrate, the molecule of life, and giving us oxygen as the breath of our air. One little green leaf gives us food, gives us water, gives us oxygen for free, from the free energy of the sun, and it's brilliant technology. But because there's this imperial colonial blindness to the living earth, the billionaires are running around of technological fixes. Climate change is not good enough. You've got to engineer the climate, block the sun, put pollution and aerosols in the sky, because the sun is the problem now. It's warming. The sun didn't warm. With a 30 degrees increase in the sun's temperature, we cool the planet with the living earth. The geoengineering goes hand in hand with the new word, they call it carbon capture and storage, as if living systems didn't know how to absorb the carbon. And they're setting up plants, and there's huge amounts of subsidies being given. The US Senate's infrastructure bill has a $3.5 billion for carbon capture facilities. Actual machines that suck carbon dioxide out. They give you no oxygen, they give you no food, they give you no water, they take more extractive minerals, more iron, more steel, and they take more energy. It's an energy-intensive system. They will add to entropy, they will add to pollution, they will add to the destabilization of the Earth's metabolism. And financially too, it is so unviable, because just as it was unviable to use synthetic chemicals as fertilizer when the Earth has all the capacity to regenerate her fertility, with the soil food web, with the more mycorrhiza and the fertility of the bacteria. Our work at Navdanya, and for those who are interested, please do go to the website of Navdanya, Navdanya, to understand how the living seed works. In fact, I'm offering a whole course right now on return to Earth, the A to Z of living seed, living soil, living food, living economies, living democracies. So, well, what will this craziness of not having an effective way of stopping fossil fuel use and allowing a recycling of carbon? This carbon capture will take, it costs $600 to remove a ton of carbon, and it will take, and it only removes, a plant removes 3 seconds of a year's worth, and it costs $600 to remove 1 metric ton of carbon. And as Bill Gates has acknowledged, the most expensive solution, but expensive solutions work because public money gets diverted to private profit as a subsidy. Without subsidies for chemicals and factory farms, we wouldn't have those toxic systems in society, in our food system. Without the subsidies for these technological fixes that will not fix the problem, because the problem is not about fixing, the problem is about the right relationship with the Earth. And the right relationship with the Earth is A, acknowledging the Earth is creative, 2, acknowledging we are part of the Earth, and therefore we are creative and have the power to regenerate. The fragmented atomistic view of society was imposed on complex interconnected living organisms and ecosystems. Each individual life form was assumed to be evolving in isolation with each other and competing with each other for scarce resources, rather than cooperating with each other to create abundance. The violence against people, especially women, indigenous people, farmers, workers, is connected to the violence against the Earth and enclosures of the infrastructure of life. Violence and conflicts in society grow when our communities are enclosed, our identities are engineered to become fragmented and negative. We don't have an identity that says, I am this because I live here, this is my place. I am this because I do this. I am creative in this way. I teach children. I take care of people as a nurse. I am a student at a university. All that positive identity is taken away. And as Samuel Huntington said in his crazy book, The Clash of Civilization, which became the justification of the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan and all of this, all these wars without end, Samuel Huntington said, I can only know who I am if I know who I hate. No, I can only know who I am if I am. I can only know who I am if I know who I love. I can only know who I am if I know my relations. And in my knowing, I care for them. I give compassion to them. I make sure no harm comes to them. Extractivism to create profits for a few, whether it be the technological fixes for climate change, fake meat, impossible burger, or the synthetic fertilizers, or the GMOs, and before that, all of the extraction of labor of the African people who were turned into slaves to work on cotton fields, as the empire of cotton. My people, the weavers, their thumbs were cut. Africans were captured as slaves. Indigenous people lost their land. And it was one empire that knitted this exploitation together. Just as Biodiversity and cultural diversity go hand in hand. Monocultures and greed go hand in hand. The mechanistic view of separation and atomization was blind to the fact that nature and society are based on cooperation, not competition. Scientists are now finding that cooperation has shaped evolution. They're finding that from the molecule to the cell, to the organism, the ecosystem, Gaia, the planet as a whole, not only is everything self-organized and self-regulated, and that's the root of freedom, that's the root of self-determination, but cooperation, mutuality, symbiosis is the principle of life. But there cannot be symbiosis and give and take if everything's the same. Diversity is what allows the place of mutuality. Diversity is also the basis of ecological stability in nature and social stability in societies. With destruction of diversity and imposition of uniformity, and what I have called the monoculture of the mind, homogeneous systems are created which are vulnerable to social and ecological breakdown. We are witnessing breakdowns of the Earth's ecosystems and ecological cycles. We are also living through breakdown of society. I mean, just look at Afghanistan. Yeah. As diversity is transformed from being the cohesive glue of society into the basis of creating cracks in social cohesion. Non-sustainability and uniformity mean that a disturbance to one part is translated into a disturbance to all parts. In ecology, we know when you have diversity, there's a disease or a pest, diversity breaks the transmission. So when you have infectious diseases, and then you put the animals in factory farms, there's an amplification in the factory farms. That's how SARS spread. And then if you have global mobility, you know, the people in India, when the lockdown happened, and the poor lost all their livelihoods, they say, why are you punishing us for a disease of the rich that came on an aeroplane? Because literally the entry of the virus was on aeroplanes, not on a bullock cart, not on a bicycle. It's an aeroplane disease. Sustainability and diversity are ecologically linked because diversity offers the multiplicity of interactions which can heal ecological disturbance. And we are living through breakdown and disturbance, and we have to seek systems of healing, and it's diversity that offers that path. In addition to providing ecological stability, diversity also ensures diversity of livelihoods. You know, if I have different plants in my forests, we can do so many things. If I have different crops on my land, I can create amazing dishes that are nutritious. And our work in Vandana has shown that the more the diversity, the more you produce. If you measure just weight of one commodity, obviously a monoculture will produce more of that commodity. That's tautological. But if you measure nutrition and health, health of the soil, health of the nutrition within the plants, the health of our food, the more the diversity, the more food we have. The more the diversity, the more dense are the interactions between soils and plants and humans. And diversity is not just the principle of organizing, it's the principle of communication. When my soil is rich with rich soil organisms, soil is a food web, it's an ecosystem, it's the richest ecosystem. There's more diversity in the soil than there are in the forests. And then when you plant lots of plants of different kinds, we save seeds. That's my work. Navdanya means 9 seeds. We saved 4,000 varieties of rice right now on our farm. And I wish some of you would be able to visit when the lockdowns are removed and the restrictions of travels are removed, because the farm is a learning center. We're growing right now 750 varieties of rice. Every kind of bean. And the beans have suffered with the exceptional bad rain we have had this year. We've saved 300 kinds of wheats, including wheats that do not cause gluten allergy. That rich diversity then makes us healthier, because this mechanistic worldview made us as human beings not just separate and different and enemies of each other, but it also made us as machines, you know, like the mechanistic worldview, everything's a machine. But if our body's a machine, all it needs is bad food as a fuel to run it. But our body is not a machine. We are an ecosystem. 100 trillion microbes in our gut microbiome is what makes health. And scientists are now waking up to the fact is the damage to the gut microbiome from toxics, chemicals, uniformity of the diet, ultra processing that is leading to the breakdown of our metabolic self-organization, that is health, and leading to chronic diseases, which is 75% of the problem of health. 75% diseases come from the way we grow and eat food. And that's why I don't know if I said this when I first came to Kansas City, but my passion right now, it has been for 30 years, save your seeds, grow a garden. That is the way we cultivate Earth democracy. Diversity, democracy, and self-organization go in hand. So when we cultivate diversity, we also cultivate freedom. Monocultures dominate control. They make us poorer. Nothing is as boring to me as a monoculture. It breaks my heart. You know, we are the land of beautiful textiles. We were the land of sarees, you know. I still wear sarees. The other day I inaugurated an exhibition of weavers who make sarees. And they're saying people are not buying sarees because the junk clothing industry has totally colonized our minds to make ugly looking clothing made in slave factories look modern. And the saree, which is perennial and permanent, we've worn sarees forever. I still have my mother's sarees. 6 yards of clothing, 6 yards of freedom is what I call my saree. And now H&Ms and the Zaras, and I can't believe it, how just a few years ago, the Adidases and the Nikes were shoe companies. Now they're clothing companies. And all that changes is the label on the t-shirt, but the factory is the same factory in Bangladesh, in Bangalore, in China, in Vietnam. Monocultures, competition, and greed have brought humanity to the brink. We face multiple emergencies, a health emergency, a climate emergency, an extinction crisis, brutal economic inequality, deepening cultural divides. Diversity can provide the healing that nature and societies need from the conservation and regeneration of biodiversity. We can learn how to conserve and regenerate cultural diversity. We are, after all, a part of nature, not separate from and apart from her. From nature, we can learn how to cultivate, nourish, and allow the flourishing of diversity, the flourishing of peace. And I will, because you have all read the book, I want to conclude by sharing a paragraph from my introduction. Earth democracy connects us through the perennial renewal and regeneration of life. From our daily life to the life of the universe, Earth democracy is the universal story of our times. In our times, in our different places. It pulsates with the limitless potential of an unfolding universe, even while it addresses the real threats to our very existence and our very survival as a species. It is hope in times of hopelessness. It brings forth peace in times of wars without end. And I would add, it brings forth love and compassion in times of hate and fear. It encourages us to love life fiercely and love each other fiercely and passionately, and attack when leaders and the media breed hate and fear. This is our potential. This is the potential we can live. And this is the potential we can realize together for a possible world beyond extinction. Thank you.